Hey everybody, it's your old pal Tom here. Let me tell you about Area 51. Ooh. That's right. Look, I think most people know how I feel about conspiracy theories. I don't think there are any legitimate conspiracy theories. I think there are conspiracies, but I think the real ones we'll never know about. I certainly don't think that 4 guys in a garage in Hunyook, Montana have figured out the top secrets that the government or anyone else is trying to keep secret. However, as it concerns Area 51, I do have a few bones to throw toward the addle-minded, easily convinced and confused people who think all sorts of things that are just absolutely ridiculous about Area 51, because there are some legitimate things that have happened and do happen at Area 51. And one of the things I will readily admit is the government, for whatever reason, and there are reasons, has been very duplicitous in addressing Area 51 over the years. I even have some documentation of that I'll be showing you. I'll tell you about the history of Area 51, a little bit about where it's located, because that's important. I'll tell you about some secret things that went on there that are no longer secret. And then we'll talk about some of those conspiracy theories. And I will try not to laugh very, very hard because they're foolish. This, of course, is our cold open that we do for our interactive YouTube audience. It gives them a little time to get into the chat room and chat and things. And it also allows our audio podcast listeners on the 30 platforms we're on to know that, yes, this is a talk show and we will be talking, and it's not just going to be the songs that I'll play in a second to give people time to get into that YouTube chat room. And I've picked songs tonight that are Area 51 oriented. The first one just involves driving on a highway in the middle of nowhere, which is where Area 51 is. And by the way, there is an official name for Area 51 that I'll share with you. And the second song is really something that could only happen in a science fiction film or the mind of a person who believes there's a tunnel under Area 51 and then there's an alien base under there and we share technology with them, and sometimes we have laser fights with them. Yeah, I said that, laser fights. There's people that believe that. It's a tacit kind of an agreement underneath Area 51 in the minds of a lot of people, where the grays, the gray aliens, and us sort of have two different sections, and we rarely cross over just on matters of absolute essential need, and then sometimes they get mad and they have laser fights. And in that world, the subject of the second song can take place. So I'm going to play these two songs, and then let me tell you about Area 51.
Passing by an exit, like reflections low, you're leaving behind what you've come to know. Turn that dial, are turning, the sun begins to rise. The lights ahead are burning as you rub your tired eyes. Turn up that radio as the lines start to slur, and just enjoy that familiar show. We're passing in the night, two strangers on the highway. On the highway, headlights burning bright. We're passing in the night, two strangers on the road. On the road, tuned into the Tom Gulley Show. All the greatest movements, Tom's voice from the dark, pulling off the highway, every stop's a stop. We're passing in the night, two strangers on the highway. On the highway, headlights burning bright. Passing in the night, two strangers on the road. On the road, tune in to the Tom Gulley Show. It was late one evening, smooth and mellow and sweet. Tom Gulley on the airwaves, laying down that beat. He heard a little rustle, tapping soft and discreet. Turned around and saw some spiders dancing on their feet. All their legs were shiny gold, and the rhythm pure heat. He thought, hold on, baby, these little fellas groove kinda crazy, and the whole room lit like a disco dream. Oh, that was the night the spiders attacked, but with disco hearts, baby, nothing got whacked. Skittering, jittering, never losing the tack. Tom Gulley smiling, feeling
Hey everybody, what's going on? I almost didn't put my ring on. What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What's shaking? Let me tell you about Area 51. If you're noodle-headed, if you were dropped on your head as a child, if you think lead-based paint chips are eat 'em up delicious, well, you may have some strange thoughts about Area 51. And I'm here to tell you, unlike most things, I'm going to say it's not your fault. There are some reasons that you probably have been easily misled into thinking that there's alien corpses there or something. But I'm going to tell you about all those things. And I'm going to tell you about the background. And I'm going to tell you about the secrecy of Area 51, which really isn't called Area 51. And the government said there's no such thing as Area 51, although there is documentation from way back with the government referring it as Area 51. I'm going to get into all that, the history, some of the things, spy stuff. Yeah, it's all there. It's all there, but there's no laser fights between aliens underneath in the tunnels, and there's no... We'll get into all of it. Before we do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. We need those likes very, very badly. Those are all absolutely free things you can do. They only cost you a click, just a click. Nobody's going to come to your house tomorrow and say, hey, person, you made clicks yesterday. You owe us $5. Nobody does that. Clicks are free. If anybody does try to do that, well, you tell them to take a long walk off a short pier because they're scamming you. If they're a Nigerian prince who says they have millions of dollars in an account, but they can't access it, but if you could, same kind of people. Anyway, we also have, oh, by the way, those likes, they help us with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing algorithm. And if you're listening on one of our 30 audio podcast platforms, you can like there and subscribe there too, and that'll help us out. We'd really appreciate it. We have super chats, we have memberships, we have gifted memberships in our YouTube chat room. That is something, that we like when that happens. And our goal every night is any amount of money. That's our goal. You can also go to the TomGulleyShow.com, and there's merchandise there. I'm wearing some of the merchandise right here, right now. I'm modeling it. I'm posing. Anyway, let's get to our YouTube chat room very quickly. There's a lot of activity in it here this evening. A lot. Area 51 has brought the freaks out. On a Friday night, the chef himself says the crew is in the kitchen there at Geraldine's Supper Club and Lounge in Indianapolis, just off Fountain Square on English Avenue. When guests of the Tom Gulley Show stay in Indianapolis, which, let's face it, they very rarely do, they always eat at Geraldine's Supper Club and Lounge. Mikey tonight there in the crew is made some ramen pork shank. And the pork shank looks absolutely fabulous. But I hate ramen so much. And people tell me all the time, it's because you've never had real ramen. You just had the stuff from the grocery store. Yeah, it's lousy, cruddy noodles to me. And it looks like there might be soup involved there, but I'm going to let that slide because that pork shank looks really good. Anyway, the chef and the crew are here. We do appreciate the support we get from the staff there at Geraldine's Supper Club and Lounge. Abiola Raha says hello. He says, I like those topics. We are living in interesting times. Jared is here. He says H2BH. He also says up fingers. That means like. Let's go, says Abiola, with the fire emoji. And he asked me if I knew that Hezbollah means party of God. And I told him, well, it doesn't sound like much of a party to me, really. Jared enjoys the tunes. And he should. Leon Kennedy has created us some bangers. Jean Genie is here. Always good to see her. Coach Mike Rodick has joined us at the start of the show. Normally he dashes in at the end. Says, made it on time for the opening. Wonders never cease. Hello to all my friends in chat. Oh, hey, Tom. Hey, Coach. And people are asking where Christian Slater has been. Christian Slater frequents our chat room on YouTube, but we haven't seen him in a while. Maybe a spider convention. Jeannie said the spider got him. Abiola is telling us the difference between ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, which is informative. Leon Kennedy says shaman is kept at Area 51. That would explain a lot. Jean Jeannie says lead paint chips with ranch dressing is the best. Yes, delicious. Okay, let's get into it. Let me tell you. Oh, wait, one more. Wade Curtis says, happy to be here. Happy to see you, Wade. H2BH to you. Happy to be here. Yes. Let's get into this, shall we? Let's get into this. Let me tell you about Area 51. Area 51 is a highly classified United States Air Force facility, and it's within the Nevada Test and Training Range in southern Nevada, about 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas. Now, the Nevada Test and Training Range is a thing we could do a whole show on that. It's extensive, very extensive. They used to test like nuclear weapons and stuff there, which gives the Fruit Loop brains some reason to say, hey, they did some stuff there. Yeah, they did. There's some other stuff. And believe me, the lead-based paint chip eaters, I feel for you. Because there is stuff, and I'm going to call that stuff out. Because I believe if I mock and ridicule you on this program, I should at least be fair when there are things that, let's just say at least 80% of the population can look at objectively and say, well, there's a good reason for that. But I admit that about 20% of the population, it makes them go goofy. So it's not your fault, is what I'm saying. Again. Now, this facility is a part of the Air Force, right? There's a lot of Air Force stuff going on. This Nevada Test and Training Range, they do all sorts of testing and training there, and we'll get into that later. They have tested and trained with some of the, at the time, most high-tech stuff that's out there. And that's another thing to consider. We, in 2026, well, the such and such plane was revolutionary and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but it was still 1960. Let's not go loopy here. Anyway, it actually is a remote detachment administered by Edwards Air Force Base, okay? It is. It actually is. And just so we can be completely above board here, the facility is officially called Homey Airport. That's right, homie. That's right. Homie, don't play that. It's Homey Airport. Or it's also known as Groom Lake. And it's known as Groom Lake due to, well, it's not actually a lake. It's a salt flat now, but it used to be a lake right next to the airport. You can see it there. It's the giant white blotch. Sorry, audio podcast listeners, but that's why they refer to it sometimes as Groom Lake. Details of the operations there are not made public. But the Air Force says, what the Air Force says is, it's an open training range. But it's commonly thought to support the development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapons. However, this is for you, paint chip eaters, the Air Force has a partner in this. In fact, It co-owns the site with an organization called the CIA. Yeah, the Air Force and the CIA acquired the site in 1955, primarily for test flights of the Lockheed U-2 aircraft, which was a very advanced spy plane at the time. Yes, it was a spy plane. By the way, there's some of the nuclear testing range stuff that went on in the early days. All the research, everything that happens at Area 51 is top secret, sensitive, compartmented information by definition. The CIA publicly acknowledged the existence of the base because for a long time they said there's not even a base there, but they did that in June of 2013 through a Freedom of Information Act request that was filed in 2005. So it took them 8 years. And it has declassified some documents detailing the history and the purpose. But there's a lot of secrecy surrounding it still to this day. And then, of course, it is the frequent subject of conspiracy theories and a major player in the UFO folklore. And by the way, can I just go ahead and say this? I believe in UFOs very deeply. Because UFO just means unidentified flying object. If there's a drone or a kid with a Piper Cub or anything else in the sky that they cannot identify, a plane with its transponder turned off, that's a UFO. It's an unidentified object that flies. The surrounding area is a popular tourist destination, including the very small town of Rachel on the so-called extraterrestrial highway. And I'm going to show you that highway a little later on. Surprisingly, there are no extraterrestrials on it. Let's talk a little bit about the geography, shall we? The original rectangular base of 6 by 10 miles is part of what they call the Groom Box, which is a box, a rectangle created by Groom Lake, the Groom Mountains, and a few other natural structures. It's a rectangle of restricted airspace. And that restricted airspace is 23 by 25 miles, which is, it's a substantial, you can't fly here. The area is, of course, connected to the Nevada Test Site Road Network. Okay, it's a network of roads that you and I probably can't drive on, most of them. It connects everything in this testing area with each other. Airport, Homey Airport, Area 51, it's part of that. And I also will point out something, and this is for you paint chip eaters. Paved roads in the Nevada Test Site Road Network lead south to a place called Mercury. It's kind of a town, but what it really is secure housing for all the people that work for Area 51. And its associated organizations like the Atomic Energy Commission and anyone who works out there, this is where they live. You and I probably can't go there. These paved roads to the west lead to the Nevada Test Site's Yucca Flats region. Okay? And sorry, audio podcast listeners, we're looking at some salt flats with various roads and things to them, but there are craters there. A lot of craters, perfectly round craters, depressions in the salt flat. What those are are the result of underground nuclear or atomic test explosions from back in the day. They make the explosion, and that crater is called, it's caused by the explosion displacing Earth from the bottom. Leading northwest from this lake, the wide and well-maintained Groom Lake Road, which I may show you a little later on, runs through a pass in what they call the Jumbled Hills. The Jumbled Hills. Again, paint chip eaters. Jumbled Hills. What's up with that? Anyway, the road formerly led to mines in the Groom Basin, and those have all closed long ago. And since then, the roads have been improved, and it winds past a security checkpoint. I'll show you that later. The restricted area around the base extends farther east. And after leaving the restricted area, Groom Lake Road descends eastward toward the floor of the Tickaboo Valley, passing the dirt road entrances to small ranches before converging with dun 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 ooh, highway, State Route 375, the extraterrestrial highway, and that's south of a town called Rachel. Rachel, of course, has a wonderful little place. It's a big tourist draw. The restaurant, bar, and motel for a place called the Little Ale Inn, if you just read English. But they've got accents on it so that it reads Little Ale Inn. Get it? Instead of Ale Inn, it's Ale Inn. And then the Yucca Mountain nuclear waste, repository is southwest of this location. Now, Groom Lake. Oh, here's the Castle Bravo nuclear test, which occurred in this area. And this is Yucca Mountain, where the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Repository waste area is. That's just the mountain. There's a mountain, and then there's nuclear waste reposited there, which has got to make you feel good if you bought property there recently. Groom Lake is a salt flat in Nevada, and nearby it is Papoose Lake. That's only significant because some people believe that you got Groom Lake, then you got Homey Airport, Area 51, and then you got Papoose Lake. And some people believe that there are tunnels from Groom Lake to Papoose Lake, and that's where the aliens and the Earthlings all have laser fights. So, but Groom Lake is a big white salt flat, and it was used as runways by the Nellis Bombing Range Test Site Airport on the north side of Area 51. Back in the days when they just said, we don't need an airport, we'll just land on the salt flats. The lake sits 25 miles south of a place called Rachel, Nevada. When in Rachel, Nevada, go to the Little Alien Inn, because it's hilarious. And it's named that because it's in, it's the Groom Lake Valley portion of the Tonopah Basin, where there's also the Tequila Mountain Range. Okay, so it's surrounded by mountains all by itself. It's about 4,000 feet above sea level, and there you go. The origin, the beginning of the name Area 51, nobody can say how that started. And why could they? Because, of course, It's believed to be from an Atomic Energy Commission numbering grid, although Area 51 is not part of the grid. And if it was, it would be next to Area 15. Another explanation was that 51 was used because it was unlikely that the Atomic Energy Commission would get to use that number because it was so high. According to the CIA, the facility called Homey Airport in Groom Lake is the official name, although the name Area 51 was used in a CIA document from the Vietnam War era. Nicknames for the facility include Paradise Ranch and Dreamland, which makes the paint chip people go crazy because, Paradise Ranch, they've got the Paradise Mind Experiment. Dreamland, they're doing dream studies that makes an alternate reality that we can't. But Dreamland is actually the approach control call signal for the surrounding area. That's the name that pilots use for the area. Air Force Public Relations has referred to the facility as an operating location near Groom Dry Lake. The special use airspace around the field is referred to as Restricted Area 4808 North, R4808N, for those of you keeping score at home. Lead and silver. And this is another part of all the conspiracy theories, is there's lead and silver and gold and minerals, and the aliens want them, and that's why we let them live in the tunnels, and we have the laser fights. Lead and silver were discovered in the southern part of the Groom Range back in 1864. And the English company Groom Lead Mines Limited financed the Conception mines in the 1870s, giving the district its name. J.B. Osborne and partners acquired controlling interest in Groom in 1876. Mining continued until 1918 and then resumed after World War II and continued till the early 50s, and then the whole place went dry and nobody cared anymore. Now, the airfield on the Groom Lake site, the airfield, opened up in 1942 as Indian Springs Air Force Auxiliary Field, and it had 2 unpaved 5,000-foot runways. And I will mention to you that the runways at Homey Airport, Area 51, are amongst the longest airport landing and takeoff strips that exist. It is unusual in that respect. They are extremely long. And some people say that's because the alien aircraft can, they need extra room. And look, if the alien aircraft is that in advance, they don't need extra room. They probably don't need a runway or landing strip. And incidentally, if it is being used for experimental aircraft, which I'm about to tell you about in a second, it's conceivable that those things would need longer runways and landing strips. So anyway, let's see what's going on in the chat room before I tell you about this next thing. And by the way, this next thing, paint chip people, it's really going to play into your fears and deepest desires for insider weird information that only you and the guy that works for your mechanic that you have beers with at TGI Fridays, you guys, the ones that know everything, it's really going to make you guys happy. CIA is here. It says, good evening, Tom. You called? Well, if I could, I would, but I didn't. Gene says it should be named, we are doing stuff we don't want you to know what we are doing. CIA says that's not entirely true. We shared our involvement with our brothers in the Middle East. Well, we did actually, but we'll get there. Gene says it's easy. If it had a little gray men, Trump would have dragged them out to say we have the best gray men in the world. Well, that or he would have kicked them out of the country, you see, because they're not here legally. CIA says you're making a lot of accusations. Be careful, Tom. Loose lips sink ships. You don't want to be lumped in with the conspiracy nuts who trust the process. All I got to say about trusting the process is I'm not going to trust the process until we lift that trophy in May, if indeed we do. And at that point, I will trust the process. And at that point, while trusting the process, I will be vindicated for trusting the process. CIA says, no, we were just spraying soldiers with Agent Orange at Dreamland. It was no big deal. Oh, don't get me into some of the things they spray there at Area 51. I was going to save this till later, but since CIA just mentioned it, there are people who believe there is a secret landing strip runway that does not appear until it is sprayed with either water or a special compound that's the result of alien technology, and then it appears and can be used, and then afterwards either the water dries and it goes away, or they spray another compound on it and that runway / landing strip disappears. They spray a lot of things at Area 51, including laser shots with plasma rifles and all sorts of stuff. I've actually watched YouTube videos, and in one case watched a guy speak in person in the basement of a church where he actually talked about being in a laser gun firefight underground in Area 51 with the Greys that they had a beef with. They always kind of had a beef. Apparently the Greys are not easy to get along with. But they had a tacit sort of truce most of the time. And then they had a big laser fight. And he showed some scars on his back, and I think one on his chest, that were the result of laser fire. They look to me like a bad sunburn. But what do I know? I'm not a laser fight doctor, so, which was quickly pointed out to me while I was in the corner laughing my head off. So the CIA, and anytime you say the CIA, pass the paint chips, please. They established the CIA actually did, in reality, establish the Groom Lake Test Facility in April of 1955 for something called Project Aquatone, which isn't a new hairspray. It's actually a thing. And that was for the development of a real thing that existed, and that was the Lockheed U-2 Strategic Reconnaissance Aircraft, better known as a spy plane. Project Director. By the way, this is the same aircraft that was shot down over Russia with Gary Powers at the helm during the Kennedy administration, where we, with a lot of egg on our face, the U.S. had to say, yeah, we were spying on you. Anyway, the director of this project to create this spy plane that was somewhat undetectable and flew at very high altitudes, Richard M. Bissell. He understood that the flight test and pilot training programs could not be conducted at Edwards Air Force Base or even Lockheed's Palmdale facility, given the extreme secrecy of this project. So he conducted a search for a suitable testing site for the U-2 spy plane under the same extreme security as the rest of the project. He notified Lockheed, which is, of course, a big aircraft and technology company, who sent an inspection team out to Groom Lake, to Homey Airport, to Area 51. According to Lockheed's U-2 designer, a guy named Kelly Johnson. We flew over it. Within 30 seconds, you knew that was the place. It was right by a dry lake. Man alive, we looked at that lake and we looked at each other. It was another Edwards. So we wheeled around, landed on that lake, taxied up to one end of it. It was a perfect natural landing field, as smooth as a billiard table, without anything being done to it. So the lake bed made an ideal strip for testing aircraft. And the Emigrant Valley's mountain ranges and the nuclear test site perimeter protected the site from visitors. About 100 miles north of Vegas. In Vegas, by the way, in 1955, not what it is today. It was remote and much more sparsely populated. The CIA asked the Atomic Energy Commission to acquire the land, designated Area 51 on the map, and add it to the Nevada test site. Obviously, because the Nevada test site was so automatically high security. It was Kelly Johnson who named the area Paradise Ranch. And he did this not because there was mind-controlled drugs in the water that made people dutiful workers and blissful and Stepford wives and stuff. No, he did it to encourage workers to move to this new facility that was, frankly, in the middle of nowhere. The CIA later shortened the name to just the ranch. In May of 1955, a survey team arrived at Groom Lake and laid out a 5,000-foot north-south runway on the southeast corner of the lake bed and designated a site for a base support facility. The ranch initially consisted of little more than a few shelters, workshops, trailer homes in which to house the very small staff there. A little over 3 months later, it had a single paved runway, 3 hangars, control tower, and some rudimentary accommodations for test personnel. And then they had amenities. They had their own movie theater. They had their own volleyball court. There was a mess hall, some wells, some fuel storage tanks. And that's when things started to happen. By the way, here's Kelly Johnson with none other than Gary Powers, that actual U-2 pilot that was shot down, captured in Russia. Big story. We ought to do a show on it, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Lots of personnel, CIA, Air Force, Lockheed, started arriving in July of 1955. The ranch received its first U-2 delivery. Spy plane in the background there. Sorry, YouTube audio podcast listener. And they got it from Burbank, California, and it came aboard a C-125 Globemaster II cargo plane, accompanied by Lockheed technicians on a Douglas DC-3. Now, paint chip people, do these look like high-tech space age aircraft? Because they don't to me. What do I know? Regular military air transport service flights were set up between Area 51 and Lockheed's offices in Burbank, California. To preserve secrecy, personnel flew to Nevada on Monday mornings, and they returned to California on Friday evenings. Here is actually a diagram. All right, the government made a diagram of, and it says, if you'll notice at the top, Area 51. Why is that important? Well, later they would say, we don't know what Area 51 is. This is from 1966, and it's from the CIA. And it's from something I'm going to tell you about right now, which is called, oh, by the way, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, please. Pretty please, it only costs you a click. I just showed you a declassified CIA document from 1966 where they admit Area 51. They wrote it on their own document. And then for years said, Area 51, I don't know what that is. And that's me, paint chip eaters, saying, look, you do have reason to be suspicious. And that's a suspicious thing. But also, a lot of us, and by a lot of us, I mean not crazy people, understand the government has to keep some secrets when things are top secret. I mean, otherwise, hey, Russians, here's what we're doing with our spy plane. We didn't want to do that. So please, just give me a like. By the way, we do have the super chats, the memberships, and the gifted memberships. And our goal, which we have not met tonight, is any amount of money. Anyway, so here's that diagram. And this diagram is for something called the Ox Cart program. Now, the Ox Cart was established in August of 1959, and it was for anti-radar studies, in other words, jamming, how do you jam a radar, aerodynamic structural tests, and engineering designs. And all the later work on the next spy plane that was being built, and that was the Lockheed A-12. And sorry, audio podcast people, but that's a pretty futuristic looking aircraft, I would say, for its time. And that might give certain people reason to believe, oh, that can't be from planet Earth, Bill. I seen this thing come over. I never seen nothing like that before. I was born ignorant, and I've been losing ground ever since. You got them paint chips over there, Bill? I like to wash them down with a grape knee high. Anyway, so this included testing the Lockheed A-12 at Groom Lake, which had inadequate facilities consisting of buildings for only about 150 people, 5,000-foot runway, asphalt, limited fuel, a hangar, some shop space. Groom Lake, by this point, had received the name Area 51, as you saw in that diagram, when A-12 test facility construction began in September of 1960, the next year, including a new 8,500-foot runway to replace the existing one. So they did all this just for this aircraft, right? Reynolds Electrical and Engineering Company began construction of a Project 51, that sounds familiar, on the 1st of October in 1960 with double shift construction schedules. They were in, gear up mode for this spy plane. During the Cold War, we need us a spy plane, Bill. I think we ought to get him with them aliens. I bet you they got some good technology. This particular contractor upgraded base facilities and built a new 10,000-foot runway diagonally across the southwest corner of the lake bed. Area 51 pilots for crosswind landings had 2 marked unpaved airstrips on the dry lake bed as well. By August of 1961, a couple years later, the construction of essential facilities was complete. 3 surplus Navy hangars were erected on the base's north side, while Hangar 7 was new construction. The original U-2 hangars were, because those are obsolete now. I mean, the Russians even had one. We crashed it. Were converted to maintenance and machine shops. Now, by this time, they had storage, administration, a commissary, a control tower, a fire station, housing. The Navy gave them 130 surplus Babbitt duplex housing units for long-term occupancy facilities. Older buildings were repaired. Additional facilities were constructed as necessary. A reservoir pond surrounded by trees was their recreation area, about a mile north of the base. They had a gymnasium, movie theater, baseball diamond, permanent fuel tank. 7 tanks were constructed there with a total capacity of 1,320,000 gallons of petrol. Security was enhanced due to the Oxcart project. The mines were closed. There was only one small one operating. The FAA expanded the restricted airspace out there to a 600 square mile region. And this facility, paint chip eaters, I'm trying to work with you here. This facility, this CIA facility, started receiving all sorts of advanced aircraft for training. Yes, they got 8 U.S. Air Force F-100 Voodoos for training. Look at that thing, which for its time was badass. Yes, they got 2 T-33 Shooting Star trainers for proficiency flying. They got a C-130 Hercules for cargo transport, which wasn't like really revolutionary. A C-130 is pretty much of a workhorse cargo plane. But the fact that they needed one said there's a lot of cargo out there. You know, when they got that cargo plane, I bet you they got all sorts of aliens and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster in that sumbitch. Anyway. They actually got a Cessna U-3A for administrative purposes. This, I couldn't figure out. This one looks kind of advanced. I think this is one from 1960. This might be the one they were using. It's a difference, audio podcast listeners, of a plane that's got the wings coming out of the sort of the bottom of the fuselage, and another one where it's at the top, like, you know, a movie about a guy that flies across Africa or Alaska. They got a helicopter for search and rescue because sometimes them aliens crash, you know. Them aliens, you know, they got that technology, but it's squirrely. It gets squirrely on you. Something about the magnetic rock in the mountains. Yeah. They got a Cessna 180 for liaison use, and Lockheed gave them an F-104 Starfighter for use as a chase plane, basically a plane that follows the plane that's doing the testing, which was a very advanced plane as well. The first A-12 test aircraft was covertly trucked from Burbank to Groom Lake in February, made its first flight in April of 1962. By this time, the base had over 1,000 personnel. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The closed airspace above Groom Lake was within the Nellis Air Force Range airspace. Pilots there saw the A-12 20 to 30 times, so it wasn't that secret. Look there, Bob, there's that A-12. Area 51 was also the site of the first Lockheed D-21 drone test flight in December of 1964. By the end of 1963, 9 of these very advanced, very secret A-12 spy planes were at Area 51. And they were assigned to the CIA-operated 1129th Special Activities Squadron. The Special Activities Squadron. Now, lead paint chip eaters, I'm going to throw you another bone here. I shouldn't do it, but I'm gonna. As I mentioned earlier, that first spy plane, okay? Remember the first spy plane I was talking about that got shot down over Russia? Remember? Surely you remember. Please tell me that you remember. Come on, you remember when I was talking about it? The plane, that first one that was secret, the U2, like the band. Remember, I was trying to get on your good side and all that? Remember that? The pilot for that was a guy named Gary Powers. And audio podcast people, I'm going to describe this to you, but the YouTube people, I'm just going to show you. There's Gary Powers in the flight suit for the U2. And that's a close-up. That's a bust shot. That might be a publicity photo, although I don't know what publicity expected to get because it was top secret. Nobody was supposed to know about it. But this is what it looked like. It's a skin-tight with little sort of waffled baffles in it. Has no markings. It's gray, maybe to get along with the gray aliens. I don't know. And then it has one of those kind of old motorcycle helmets with a microphone and the other stuff on it. But he looks a little bit like a spaceman. Even I can say he looks a little spacemanish. And frankly, I don't want to say anything about his physique or anything, but it's just a little skin tight for my liking, you know. But I'm an aggressive gambler, Mr. Vegas. Stribbs is here. He says, happy to be here. Good evening, Tom. Happy to be here to you. Coach Mike Rodick said, so what you're saying, Tom, Area 51 is America's worst kept secret. I blame Art Bell for that. Hello, West Coast Line. You're on the air. Art Bell from AM Coast to Coast. Do you have any radio stations I worked at that programmed AM Coast to Coast? And when Art Bell was on, it was a good show. But I will say this, whether it was Art Bell or his successor, George Norrie, I've never really been aware of people that were so anxious to believe anything. I mean, I never heard those guys once go, that doesn't sound reasonable or rational or possible to me. What's wrong with you? East Coast Line, you're on the air. Yeah, Art, I just wanted to call you up. I'm convinced, and I got, proof to prove it, that my soap dish is a door to the netherworlds. Well, it's, I think Norse mythology in the 3rd century indicated that, it's like, why wouldn't you just say, no, your soap dish is not doing that? But they never say that on AM Coast to Coast. So it's just part of the paint chip eating thing. Strip says, looks like something Madonna would wear. It does, kind of. Gene Genie says, looks a little tight in some places. It does. And one of those places, I don't like to be vulgar on the show. I think it's probably pretty obvious, but one of those places might be camel related. I don't know what it's referred to when you're a guy, but J.C. Vastgood, in an attempt to make everything about Germany, says Area 51 is a warehouse for all the German technology you stole. Really? Don't you have a work camp to be the tour guide of or something? Did we steal that technology? Did we steal the train technology? Did we steal the rounding people up technology? Did we steal the gas oven technology from Germany? I don't think we did. Did we steal the guard dog and barbed wire technology? Did we steal the large open wooden buildings without heat technology? Did we steal the horrible genocide technology? I don't think we did any of that. Maybe think about that a little bit. Plenty there to keep you busy. Plenty there to keep you busy. So after the loss of Gary Powers' U-2, which you see here behind him as he's wearing that, well, I'll just say it. It's a creepy suit. It's just a creepy suit. Maybe that was their goal. I don't know, but it's creepy. It's good and creepy. And I don't like it that that plane was named U-2 because I like the band U-2, and I don't, After the loss of Gary Powers' U-2 over the Soviet Union, there were several discussions about using the A-12 ox cart as an unpiloted drone. Remember, I showed you the A-12? This guy? They were thinking about making that into a drone, even back in the 60s. They thought it was not going to work, though. Kelly Johnson, the guy from Lockheed that designed all this stuff, all right, kind of a genius. He's the one that said, maybe we could use it as a drone. He came up with the idea. But even though he came up with the idea, he opposed the development of the A-12 as a drone because he thought it was too large and too complex to convert it into a drone. But the Air Force agreed to fund a study of a high-speed, high-altitude drone aircraft in October of 1962. And the CIA was like, drone, count us in. And the project was designated Q-12. And they very quickly finalized a design for the drone. And they changed it to D-21 to distinguish it from the other A-12-based projects. And Tagboard was the project's code name. They completed this in the spring of 1964. They checked it out for 4 months, and they shipped it to Groom Lake and reassembled it. And it had to be carried by the M21, another aircraft. Technical problems, though, occupied the D-21 at Groom Lake in 64 and 65, including aerodynamic difficulties. By late January of 1966, more than a year after the first flight, everything seemed ready. They launched it. They flew at 120 miles with limited fuel. They did it again. They flew at 1,200 miles, reaching Mach 3 at 90,000 feet. And on July 30th, 1966, a fully fueled D-21 was launched on what was supposed to be a checkout flight. But the drone suffered something called an unstart, okay? A breakdown in the supersonic airflow to the engine. And it collided with the M21 launched aircraft. The two crewmen ejected and landed in the ocean, 150 miles offshore. One was picked up by a helicopter, but the other, having survived the aircraft breakup and ejection, well, the thing about those pressure suits, they're sealed completely, which is fine when you're in the air, but when you're in water, if the seawater can get in there, you're not going to get it out, and you're going to drown. Kelly Johnson personally canceled the entire program, having serious doubts about its feasibility from the start. They'd already produced a bunch of them, and so they kept trying to test it, and it kept not working, and so that's no fun, paint chip eaters. Everybody knows it. Coach Mike Rodick says, I drive a truck at night and have for years. I've always thought Art Bell and George Norrie were full of it. You know what it is, but interesting to listen to. They are interesting to listen to, and I would say they do a great show every November 22nd for the Kennedy assassination. Even though it might be a bunch of malarkey, they do a good job with it. And then they do another great show on Halloween with the ghost stories. People just call in and tell ghost stories, which is fun. It's not meant to be anything but fun. CIA says the suit is designed for taking the G-force of just taking off in those planes. Never mind pulling maneuvers. I know what it's for. Believe me. It's also for looking silly. Here's another thing that you should know. And this is for you, paint chip eaters. Okay? This is a legitimate thing that you can be conspiracy-ish about. And that's foreign technology evaluation. We were in the Cold War. And when you're in a war of any kind, much less the Cold War, you'd really like to get a hold of some of their stuff and test it. Well, guess what? Beginning in the late 1960s and for several decades thereafter, the United States tested and evaluated captured Soviet fighter aircraft at Area 51. And this wasn't a new mission. The Army Air Forces had tested foreign technology during World War II. After the war, testing of acquired foreign technology was performed by the Air Technical Intelligence Center under the direct command of the Air Materiel Control Department. Yeah. And their focus limited the use of a fighter as a tool with which to train the service's pilots. They recruited pilots from the Air Force Flight Test Center at Edwards Air Force Base, who were usually graduates from various test pilot schools. Tactical Air Command selected its pilots primarily from the ranks of weapons school graduates. So, in August of 1966, Iraqi Air Force fighter pilot Captain Munir Redfa defected. He left the Iraqis as part of Operation Diamond of Israel's Mossad, flying his MiG-21 to Israel after being ordered to attack Iraqi Kurd villages with napalm. His aircraft was transferred to, yes, Area 51 in late 1967 for evaluation of its performance, technical, and operational capabilities. Israel loaned this MiG-21 to the Air Force from January of 68 to April of 68. In 1968, and you're going to love this. I can't tell you how much you're going to love this because I love it, and I'm not going to stop loving it. In 1968, the United States Air Force and U.S. Navy jointly formed a project known as, are you ready? Top secret, foreign aircraft. Naturally, they'd come up with some whiz-bang, intimidating, but appropriate code name for the project. They formed a project known as Have Donut. Have Donut. Why? I don't know. In which Air Force Systems Command, Tactical Air Command, and the U.S. Navy's Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 4 flew this acquired Soviet-made aircraft in simulated air combat training. Because the United States possession of the Soviet MiG-21 was itself pretty top secret, they chose to test it at Area 451. So they put it through a joint Air Force Navy team dogfight test program. Initial evaluations showed our F-4 and the MiG-21 to be evenly matched. The have donut test showed that the skill of the man in the cockpit was what made the difference. Gosh, go figure. There weren't any real clear advantages. No. Hey, guess what? Then on the 12th of August, 1968, two Syrian Air Force lieutenants, Walid Adam and Radfan Rafai, took off in a pair of MiG-17s on a training mission. Well, they lost their way. Believing they were over Lebanon, they went ahead and landed at the Betzet landing field in northern Israel. By the year's end, these MiG-17s were transferred from Israel and added to the Area 51 test fleet, and they were given U.S. Air Force designations and fake serial numbers so they could be identified in U.S. Department of Defense standard flight logs. And they conducted the mock dogfights. And by the way, this was called have drill. I don't know why it's a have donut, have drill. Yeah. And they expanded this whole program in 1970, and F-1s were fighting MiGs and other things all the time. Now, after this happened, during the remainder of the Vietnam War, the Navy kill ratio climbed to 8.33 to 1, which is really good. Yeah. The main reason for this was the Top Gun program. But part of that program was fighting the MiGs. In 1973, Project Have Idea took over from Have Donut, Have Ferry, and Have Drill projects. Have Idea was transferred to the Tonopah Test Range Airport, very near Area 51. Area 51 also hosted Have Glib, which tested Soviet tracking and missile control radar systems. They actually had a total complex, a full complex of replica Soviet-type threat systems. So they had like this little fake Soviet, which I think is hilarious. Simply hilarious. Here's another thing. I don't know if any of you remember this. I remember it quite clearly, but there was the Iran hostage crisis. Iran took hostage of 50-some people in our embassy and wouldn't let them go. Well, media nationwide reported that Area 51, described as a secret sector, was where U.S. forces trained to rescue the hostages in Iran. Yes. In keeping with all this have stuff, hey, paint chip eaters, are you still with me? Or are you just mad? He used to be part of the lamestream media. Anyway, this is actually something that would make a person, or, something approaching the level of a person, think there were UFOs and things like that. And that's the Lockheed Have Blue prototype stealth fighter, which is a smaller proof of concept model of the F-117 Nighthawk. And that was flying out at Area 51. So it is very possible that, if a guy was sitting on his front porch and, was trying to protect his hogs from getting eaten by the aliens and saw this fly over, You might think, well, that's got to be a UFO. No human created that there oblongal rhombozoidal. In 1978, the Air Force awarded a full-scale development contract for the F-117, another spy plane, to Lockheed. In January, the Lockheed test team at Area 51 accepted delivery of the first full-scale prototype. And they flew it in June. Yes. And that was the F-117 Nighthawk, which again looks very not of this world. So I'm going to say, if you're one of those people that can only understand things you've seen before and couldn't possibly imagine that a new technology would create something very non-intuitive and might look like it came from someplace else, well then, yeah, they're going to see that and go, I bet you there's a little green sucker in there and he's just flying around eating people's hogs. That's right, he just flies down, he eats a couple hogs, and he moves on to the next town. Got my cousin pregnant. That's exactly what they say. They established another covert base for this particular aircraft. Eventually, the one that was sort of close to Homey Airport, Area 51, Groom Lake, call it what you will, the Tonopah Airport. And a lot of the Area 51 conspiracy, well, that's part of the same thing. They just got them tunnels. These tunnels, they either ride around in them really fast golf carts, or they got a moving sidewalk like in the airport in Denver. That's what they got there. And also these sometimes Nellis Air Force Base was made part of the party. And this, by the way, is that Tonopah test range airport. All right, now let's get to the paint chippers. Come on back. I got some stuff for you. You're gonna love this. You're gonna love it. You're absolutely gonna love it. All right. Dan. The U.S. government has provided minimal information regarding Area 51. The area surrounding the lake is permanently off limits to both civilian and normal military aircraft. Security clearances are checked regularly. Cameras, weaponry, not allowed. Even military pilots training in the Nevada Test and Training Range risk disciplinary action if they stray into the box surrounding Area 51's airspace. They have all sorts of surveillance cameras and also buried motion sensors. Area 51 is a common destination for something called Janet Airline. Have you ever flown on Janet Airline? Have you ever heard of Janet Airline? Right now in a garage in Topeka, Kansas, a couple of ago, I heard of that. We all know about that. Us Area 51 people that know about that, we know Janet Airline. Okay, well, what Janet Airline is, this is for you paint chippers, a small fleet of passenger aircraft operated on the behalf of the United States Air Force to transport military personnel, primarily from Harry Reid International Airport, which used to be McCarran. It's the Las Vegas airport. So you and I can't fly on that. No. You and I can't. But people going in and out of Area 51 can. It's a spatial airport. You can't get double vodka for their frequent flyer program at the airport bar. They just, okay. The CIA and the United States Air Force have both commented on Area 51. Matter of fact, in 1998, the Department of the Air Force responded to a person whose name is redacted. This responds to your letter to the Secretary of the Air Force regarding, quote, Area 51, end quote. Neither the Air Force nor the Department of Defense owns or operates any location known as, quote, Area 51, end quote. There are a variety of activities, some of which are classified, throughout what is often called the Air Force's Nellis Range Complex. There is an operating location near Groom Dry Lake. Specific activities and operations conducted on the Nellis Range, both past and present, remain classified and cannot be discussed publicly. We hope this information is helpful. Signed, Jeffrey A. Ramses, Major, United States Air Force, Chief, White House Inquiry Branch, Office of Legislative Liaison. Ramses! Now he got them Egyptian gods involved in it. And this is in 1998. Now, I already showed you the diagram from 1966 that the CIA had made that said, boldface, right out in the plain open daytime, Area 51. I showed you that. I'm trying to help you out a little here, paint chippers. Hello, paint chippers. Well, here's a document by Billy Gumbo from 1967 from the CIA. Oxcart Renaissance Operations Plan. Point number 2 contains the sentence, 3 Oxcart aircraft and the necessary task force personnel will be deployed from Area 51 to Kadena. So the government been hiding all that Area 51 business. They've been hiding it. Oh, yeah. They've been hiding it. Yeah. By the way, the United States Geological Survey, they have a topographic map for the Area 51 area, but it only shows the Groom mine from back in 1864 that had long since been not in use. However, the survey's aerial photographs of the site in 1959 and 1968 were publicly available. A civil aviation chart published by the Nevada Department of Transportation shows a large restricted area defined as the Nellis Air Force Base restricted airspace. The National Atlas shows the area as lying within the Nellis Air Force Base. There are higher resolution and newer images available from other satellite imagery providers, including Russian providers. These show runway markings, base facilities, aircraft, and, of course, vehicles. It was in 1998 that the Air Force officially acknowledged the existence of Area 51. In 2013, the CIA released an official history of the U-2 and Oxcart projects, which acknowledged that the U-2 was tested at Area 51. Numerous references to Area 51 in Groom Lake, including that map that I showed you. There's an environmental lawsuit during the Clinton administration nobody cares about. So here is the Groom Lake Road. Now, I don't know if middle of nowhere means anything to you, but that is one long, flattened gravel road, ladies and gentlemen. It really, really, really is. They accidentally sort of released some data in December of 2007. Pilots noticed that the base had appeared on their aircraft navigation systems database after an update to that database with it's called an ICAO, Airport Identifier, International Civil Aviation Organization Identifier Code of KXTA, and listed as Homey Airport. That was probably inadvertent, and it led to some advice from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association that said, yeah, you need to stay away from that. You need to stay the hell away from that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the security, because I know you want to know about the security they got around this here place. Oh, I know all about the security. The perimeter of the base is marked by orange posts, and it's patrolled by guards in white pickup trucks and camouflage fatigues. These guards are popularly referred to as camo dudes by the enthusiasts that go out there trying to sniff around, and of course the guards don't like that and such. Here's the main gate of Area 51. Now, how unobtrusive does that main gate look? I've seen roads shut down on state parks for the winter that are more secure than this. But the guards there won't ask, they will not answer any questions about their employers. But there are indicators that they're government contractors. They're employed by a company like ACOM or somebody that has very highly trained security guards. These aren't mall cops, okay? These are really highly trained people. Signage around the base and its perimeter advises that deadly force is authorized against trespassers. I mentioned the technology, obviously surveillance cameras, motion detectors. And some of these motion detectors are placed far from the base itself, so they know in plenty of time when people are coming. They know when you're coming. Let's see. There was an incident with Skylab. Skylab, of course, the famous laboratory in the sky that fell to Earth at one point in time or another. But in 1974, it was taking photography of the surface of the U.S. And there was something that happened called the Skylab incident. It's based on a memo written in 1974 to CIA Director William Colby. Boy, he looks like a lot of fun. By an unknown CIA official. The memo reported that astronauts on board Skylab had inadvertently photographed a certain location. But even though that location's name was obscured, you can tell by what they're talking about. The subject was Area 51, Homey Airport, Groom Lake. It was said that the CIA considered no other spot on Earth to be as sensitive as Groom Lake. Even within the agency's National Photographic Interpretation Center that handled classified reconnaissance satellite photographs, images of the sites were removed from film rolls and stored separately, and not everybody had security clearance to them. This memo includes handwritten remarks, apparently by CIA Director William Colby. He says, the Secretary of State did raise this question. He said the State Department felt strongly, But he inclined leave the decision to me. I confess some question over the need to protect, since the USSR has its own satellites. What does it really reveal? And if exposed, don't we just say classified United States Air Force work is done there? The declassified documents don't disclose the outcome of these discussions regarding Skylab and its photography. There was a shooting incident there. A guy drove through the checkpoint. There was an 8-mile chase. The man exited his vehicle carrying a cylindrical object, which is just for you, paint chip eaters. Well, apparently he made a furtive grab for a cylindrical object that has not as yet been identified, but is constructed with materials and substances not found on this earth. They can't tell where it's from. Yeah. Yep. Oh, they got them some Fruit Loops. Area 51 has become a focus of modern conspiracy theories because of all the secrecy and the classified aircraft and the fact that some people dropped on their head, held their breath too long underwater. Think lead-based paint chips are an hors d'oeuvre. Ate too much school paste when they were in third grade. Those people. Some of the conspiracy theories are the storage, examination, and reverse engineering of crashed alien spacecraft, including materials supposedly recovered at Roswell, New Mexico. They're also studying their occupants and the manufacture of aircraft based on the alien technology. So they say the reason that all the aircraft testing is going on there is because when them alien aircraft crash, and you know they're likely to crash after they've traveled millions of light years to get to our planet, and them aliens haven't figured out a way to self-destruct them aircraft when they do crash, if they were to crash. We've taken them planes and we've taken them alien bodies, and then we's figuring out ways to use that stuff. They believe that Area 51 is where meetings or joint projects with the extraterrestrials take place. And as I mentioned, some people believe that there is a component of gray aliens living underneath Area 51 and tunnels and shared technology. They believe that the development of exotic energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative or other weapons programs are taking part down there. And of course, sometimes when we're developing weapons like that, they have them laser fights. They believe that Area 51 controls the weather. They believe that Area 51 is developing time travel and teleportation technology. They believe that activities related to the conspiracy theory of a one-world government are headquartered there. Many of the hypotheses concern something I've been talking about this entire show, and that is underground facilities at Groom Lake or Papoose Lake, just right next to Area 51. There include claims of a transcontinental underground railroad system, not just under Area 51, mind you. Area 51 is a big train station, but it's transcontinental, this underground train system. I mentioned this earlier. It's a disappearing airstrip nicknamed the Cheshire Airstrip after Lewis Carroll's Cheshire Cat, which briefly appears when water is sprayed onto its camouflaged asphalt, with them engineering based on energy technology from the aliens. There's one of the cameras that's out there. There's one of the cameras out there. Now, there's certain things, I won't get into it too much, but there's certain things having to do with the altitude of flights, like in the 50s, civilian aircraft could fly under 20,000 feet. Military aircraft went up to 40,000 feet. The U-2 spy plane began flying above 60,000 feet. And that's when there was a dramatic increase in UFO sighting reports. So I get all that. And the shape of these planes being unprecedented. I get all that. There's also something called the Aurora X plane, which was a developmental plane that made people do, it's going to be a flying saucer. That is a flying saucer, is what that is. I'll tell you what. There was a guy by the name of Edward James Ruppelt. And he was in charge of something that the government had called the Blue Book, informally. And that Blue Book kept track of all of the UFO sightings. Now, keep in mind, UFO could be a weather balloon. It's just something in the sky they can't identify. That's exactly what it means. But he was in charge of all that. And that was very, very, very top secret for a very, very, very long time. He even made a map, as you can see. Sorry, audio podcast listeners, in this photo. There's a ton of documentaries and other stuff that have been done about this. There's been a ton of movies it's appeared in. If you saw Independence Day, then you know what I'm talking about. Here's the back gate and the local sheriff's department guarding it. Can't take pictures. Can't do none of that. That's really all I have to tell you about Area 51. There's no real proof that anything has ever gone on there that's conspiracy related, unless you consider the development of advanced technology a conspiracy. That, of course, has gone on like crazy. But there's no. Come on. Come on. There are a lot of people, though, that go out there to the alien and, Bob, I tell you what, I swear to God, we wait out there tonight. I got a trail cam from when I went deer hunting with my brother. And if we set that up, it's motion activated. Any of them aliens come by, we're going to catch them. Just think about this for a second. The number of miles that an intergalactic or interplanetary spacecraft would have to travel to get to Earth and be able to travel back would require a technical sophistication great enough that we could not detect them. Hand of God. That's just the truth of it. So all these people that are like that, they must have crashed. There's really just no. This fella here is a Canadian astronaut, as you might guess. He's not cosplaying. His name is Chris Hadfield, and he wrote a novel in 2023 called The Defector, in which a Soviet Air Force pilot defects to the United States with his MiG-25 during the Cold War and is debriefed at none other than Area 51. And a lot of people believe, well, he was an astronaut. He wrote that book. I bet you that book is based in truth. I bet you 8 cents on the dollar. I'll bet you credits to Navy beans. By God, that guy, he knows something. And he writ that book. Anyway. No show tomorrow night. Saturday, we will cover The Shadow. Who knows what evil lurks in the minds of men? The Shadow knows. We'll cover that. And then on Sunday, I will again apologize. And I got to write Ed Robertson a note right after this show. I am doing a show on the Rockford Files. Really good friend of the show, Ed Robertson, should be here for that. He is the world's leading expert on the Rockford Files, by far. Interviewed James Garner. He knows everything, every episode. By name, you tell him what the message at the start of the Rockford File is, and he would tell you what episode. He knows everything. But I made the executive decision that I'd rather have Ed on when we do a show about James Garner, because he also knows everything about Maverick and other James Garner things. So I don't like to wear out my Ed Robertson, author of the Rockford Files Companion, the Maverick Companion, the FBI dossier, don't like to play my Ed Robertson card too frequently. Don't want to wear that out. So, Rockford Files. On Sunday, what do we got in the chat room? H2BH, despite the South bashing. Oh, there's plenty of people in the North crappy at life. There's plenty of guys that like, know what I seen up there? You seen all them lights up there? Let me tell you right now. I got some tinfoil, and I put it on some rabbit ears. I don't know what world they were from, but they were speaking a language on my television that they had to be from Area 51. That's probably where they were going. It was, I couldn't figure it out. And it's not, the Southern Voice is because of the hinterlands of Nevada more than anything else. Randy says, another great show, Tom. Everybody say goodnight, Gracie. Good night, Gracie. Crappy Life says they were from Rochester. Oh, not Rochester. Rochester is the epicenter of world knowledge and culture. Oh, don't talk that way about Rochester. Good Lord. Rochester is the coolest place on earth with the coolest people. They are the hippest, most up-to-date, trend-setting. Oh, hey, easy on Rochester. Everybody I know from Rochester, just, man, they think they hung the moon. They sit from on high, up on, from Mount cooler than everybody, and look down upon the rest of us. Rochester, oh my God. They got a local dish there called the garbage plate. I don't have to say anything else. And the garbage plate is probably more flattering than the ingredients of the garbage plate. They should have called it the septic tank. The mishmash of foods they throw together, and that's cool. I think we're gonna have before COVID, we were going to have a big Tom Gulley Show event in Vegas. I had it all set up. I think we do it again. I'm going to do it in Rochester. And I'm going to make sure and get everybody that like might have a car that they don't like anymore, and they can insure it for theft and get the blue book value on it. Because Rochester is a good place to have your car burgled or stolen. All right, that's all I got. Look, I hope you guys have a great Friday tomorrow. And lead paint eaters, this one was for you. He did that show. He's a government operative. He just don't want to believe. Anybody that wants to open their eyes can see, you know. A nod's as good as a wink to a blind bat. You know, that's what I say. Well, he can't prove there ain't aliens under there having laser fights. He can say there ain't all he wants, but he can't prove it. No, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. I also can't prove that there is a small tree sloth living in your stomach. I can't prove. Anyway. All right. I'm looking at that old clock on the wall. It says, I got a Amscray. TomGulleyShow.com. Merchandise. We again did not meet our goal of any amount of money, which is really a pretty reasonable goal. And we didn't do it again. Dang. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. You also can't go under the tunnels at Area 51 between Groom Lake and Papoose Lake. And you also can't take place in the plasma rifle laser fights that occasionally spring up. And according to the guy in the basement of the church with the alleged laser burns, after one of these fights, everything would calm down. It kind of had to happen, you know, to get all the bad blood out. It just had to happen once in a while. Anyway. I think, what am I going to play? I'm going to play Passing in the Night. I don't need to play Spiders Attacked again, I don't think. I like the Passing in the Night song better. So that's what I'm going to play. Hey, we don't get any amount of money that I get to pick. All right, kids. Thank you all for being here. You guys rock. You make the show absolutely a blast to do. Tell a friend. Give us a like. Do some free stuff. You know, tell a friend, write a little note, share one of the better shows. Maybe not this one. Maybe this one's not quite. But share one of the really good ones and say, hey, if you got too much free time, if you're having trouble sleeping, here's the guy for you. And with all that being said, I think the only thing left to say is, till next time, we'll see you next time.
Passing by an exit, like reflections low, you're leaving behind what you've come to know. Turn that dial as the white lines roll. Headlights burning bright. Two strangers on the road. your tired eyes.